Welcome, everybody, to a very special AV Club edition of Mac Stories Unwind. I'm John Voorhees, and with me are Federico Viticci and Jonathan Reed. Hi, guys.
Hey, John.
Hey, John. Hi, Federico.
Hello. We're all here, and it's always nice when we're all here together.
Yeah,
it is. I should mention that this is sponsored by Collide. I won't be reading the ad during this live recording, but I'll drop it in later. Collide is sponsoring Mac Stories Unwind this week, so that's the story. And today, we're going to be talking about Super Mario Brothers Wonder, which came out, like 3 weeks ago, maybe at this point?
A couple of weeks ago, I think, yeah.
October 20th, to be precise.
October 20th, so yeah. That's almost exactly 2 weeks ago.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought, Jonathan was kind enough to put some notes together for us with some good ideas about what we should talk about today. And I think a good place to start with something like Super Mario Brothers, which is a decades-long franchise at this point, is to start a little bit with our history. How long have we been playing Super Mario games or just Mario games in general? And what's that history all about? And maybe we should start with you, Federico. You've got a pretty long history with Super Mario and the Mario Brothers.
Oh my, yes. I mean, that's such a complicated question to answer for me.
I know.
Super Mario and I, we go way back. So I feel like in trying to remember this, I've been thinking about this question for a few hours. I'm pretty sure that my first sort of exposure to Super Mario was very briefly on the Super Nintendo. I never had an NES, like the original Nintendo console. I never had one until years later, when, for the spirit of collecting things, I would buy one as an adult collector. But as a kid, my first console was a Super Nintendo, and I think the first Mario game I tried was Super Mario World. So that was on the Super Nintendo. But really, I was really little, like I was 4 or 5 years old, I think. I wasn't even going to elementary school, I think, at that point. So I'm pretty sure that my first real exposure to Super Mario was on the Game Boy. And It was either Super Mario Land 2 or Super Mario Land 3. I'm pretty sure. And those were also spin-offs of the sort of main franchise. But there were 2D Mario games that you could play on the not even black and white, more like green and gray screen of the original Game Boy. And then, of course, came the GBA, the Game Boy Advance. And that's when most of my video game memories, they really start with the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance, because at that point I was 10, 11 years old, and I have more memories from that time period compared to when I was 6 or 7. And on the Game Boy Advance, I replayed and finished the remake of, not a remake, I guess, like a port of Super Mario World. So I played and finished on the GBA. The GBA was a great console for Super Nintendo ports. And in fact, on the same Game Boy Advance, I also played and finished the GBA version of Super Mario Yoshi's Island. That was that was the follow-up to Super Mario World. And I'm pretty sure that I also played, but didn't like, Super Mario Bros. 3. The GBA also had a version of that. Then, I mean, excluding all the different spin-offs, one of my all-time favorite games is Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga on the GBA, but that's more of a role-playing game. Then, of course, there's all these games that I've mentioned so far are the 2D Mario games. But I gotta be honest with you both. Historically speaking, I've always been more of a 3D Mario person. I obviously played and liked Mario 64 more on the 3DS than the original Nintendo 64 version. I think on the 3DS, that's where I really fell in love with Mario 64. With the touch input, with the stylus and everything.
Right.
That was really fun to play, especially if you'd never tried a touchscreen before, that was really a transformative experience at the time. But one of my all-time 3D sort of Mario games, like one of my all-time favorites, is Super Mario Sunshine on the GameCube. I know that it's somewhat of a controversial choice because it is not the best Mario game of all time, but boy, did I love Mario Sunshine and the general sort of vibe and music and colors. I also really liked Galaxy, especially the first one on the Nintendo Wii. And I didn't fall in love with it like I did with, say, Breath of the Wild, but I liked Odyssey on the Nintendo Switch. That was like 5 years ago at this point, or 6 years ago, which feels wild. So
Yeah.
essentially, I played every single Mario game. I've always been more of a 3D Mario person, but this game that we're discussing today, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I think it's my favorite 2D Mario of all time. So that's my context.
All right. How about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think my first introduction was on the Game Boy, because I had a Game Boy when I was a lot younger, so I didn't experience the NES or the Super Nintendo either. So yeah, first one for me was the Game Boy, and I played a lot of that, like you say, Federico, on the green and black screen, which is weirdly iconic. Which
It was awful.
I know, but it's sort of iconic though. Weirdly, they didn't mean it to be that to be a sort of iconic look, but it kind of was really. It has a nostalgic feel, I think, now. And yeah, so I played that on the Game Boy, and then I didn't really have much more experience on Mario except for Mario Kart, which became a big hit. I remember we were never allowed a game console when I was younger except for the Game Boy. But when we went up to my grandparents, we always rented a Nintendo. There was a 64 normally at the time, and we'd always rent Mario Kart, and we'd play that for hours and hours. And then subsequently, when I was older, it became a sort of a tradition, of a weekly tradition with my friends to have a couple of beers, play Mario Kart before we went out to the pub.
Yeah.
And then sometimes at the end of the night, 2 a.m. in the morning, you'd come back to someone's house after a night out and you'd play some more Mario Kart. And it just became, I think I became a lot more familiar with Mario Kart than with the actual platform game with Mario. But then I did get it was one of the classic lockdown buys of buying the Switch, and I played Odyssey, and that was kind of my way back into Super Mario, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I played a lot of hours of that during the lockdown, and then I've been on to Mario Wonder now, and it's very nostalgic to play Wonder because it takes me right back to playing on the Game Boy back in the day, yet still even more exciting than that, really. So I've been enjoying sort of reliving my childhood in a way by playing Wonder. So it's been really good. How about you, John?
Yeah, what about you, John?
So I think I'm actually kind of right there with Jonathan. I started by playing Super Mario Brothers on the SNES and loved that. I mean, I was already out of school by the time I owned an SNES, as they call it in the US. And I didn't have a ton of game playing time, but those handful of early Super Nintendo games I had included Super Mario Brothers, and was one that I played over and over and over again. And over the years, that system kind of traveled with me to various places I lived. For a while, it lived at my parents' lake house, where me and my siblings would get together in the summer. We would sometimes have a late night Super Mario session, trying to, finish the game in a weekend type of thing. And then I have, as Federico knows, a deep hole in my video game playing history in the 90s when my kids were young. And I did play enough in that era to get hooked on Mario Kart and play a couple of versions of that here and there. But it really wasn't until more recently that I dipped back into the world of Mario with the Switch and got hooked on Odyssey. I think Odyssey suffered a little bit from being released with a lot of other good games kind of around the same time, right when the Switch was taking off, and maybe people didn't play it quite as much as they might have otherwise if it had been released, say, last year, which was kind of a quiet year for the Switch. But I still really enjoyed that game, and it kind of got me back into it. And it was the, what's the Bowser's Fury one? It was Super Mario.
Yeah, it was the...
Fury, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Bowser's Fury. Wasn't it like sold as a 2-pack game of sorts that included... what was it?
Super Mario 3D World, I think, wasn't it?
Yes. It was 3D World from the Wii U. I totally forgot about the Wii U.
Right. And I actually, I love that game. And that one's what really, after Odyssey, really got me deep back into Mario. And I started going back because now that I have the Analog Pocket and have since purchased an analog Super NT, I've been buying old games and playing some of these early Game Boy games and Game Boy Advance games that Federico was talking about, but only in the last 2-3 years have I been doing that. So I have this deep catalog of Mario stuff that I return to and have been playing from time to time. And I still like just loading up my original Super Mario Brothers cart in the Super NT and playing it. I was just trying the other day. I was playing it with Orion, that game from that app from the Halide folks, and up-resing it to 4K on my iPad Pro, and it looks really nice.
The things John does. I love
As
that.
if you don't do them too, Federico.
Yeah. I also do this, yes. So
this special AV Club episode of Mac Stories Unwind is brought to you by Kolide. If you work in security or IT and your company has Okta, this message is for you. Have you ever noticed that for the past few years, the majority of data breaches and hacks you read about have something in common? It's the employees, because hackers absolutely love exploiting vulnerable employee devices and credentials. But it doesn't have to be that way. Imagine a world where only secure devices can access your cloud apps. In this world, phished credentials are useless to hackers, and you can manage every OS, even Linux, from a single dashboard. Best of all, you can get employees to fix their own problems and security issues without creating headaches for IT. The good news is you don't have to imagine this world. You can just start using Kolide. Kolide is the device trust solution for companies with Okta, and it ensures that if a device isn't trusted and secure, it can't log into your cloud apps. Visit kolide.com/MacStoriesUnwind to watch a demo and see how it works. That's KOLIDE.com/MacStoriesUnwind. Our thanks to Kolide for their support of the show.
Okay, so Super Mario Bros. Wonder. So obviously there's a long and multi-layered history to the Super Mario franchise, and I mean,
right?
There's the movie that obviously sort of gave a whole new life to the Mario franchise and sort of ecosystem of games and gadgets and media properties. I mean, there's a remake of Super Mario RPG coming out this week on Friday.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Which I'm really excited about. And Super Mario Bros. Wonder. So I've been thinking about this. I've been playing the game a good bit, and I've been obviously, like all the reviews have said, this game is wonderful, right? It's so pretty to look at. It sounds great and it plays great. You can play single player. You can play with multiple people, and I haven't tried that, but I assume it's a lot of fun. The best way, though, that I can, I guess, summarize this game for me is it feels like the kind of game that hits you over and over and over with new, fresh ideas. And you play a stage, you discover this new gimmick, this new mechanic. Like, for example, I just did this level where you're supposed to sort of collect these coins by having Mario climb these poles. That, however, these poles, they only sort of extend vertically for a limited amount of time. After that, you got to jump back, hit the cube, sort of hit the box that sort of extends the pole again, and start over. And so this game introduces these mechanics that are sort of taken here and there from the very long, almost 40-year history of Mario games and blends them all together in a single sort of incredible salad of a Mario game. There's a little bit of everything. And all these new mechanics, they get introduced consistently throughout the course of the game, and they build upon each other, right? And so this feels like the Nintendo developers had this notebook with all these ideas scribbled down through the decades. And at some point, somebody was like, you know what, all those ideas, go for it. And it just feels like a Mario game where the Nintendo designers were not afraid to try anymore to break conventions or rules. And it's the combination of those mechanics, how they get introduced judiciously throughout the game, explained like only Nintendo can explain a new game mechanic, and very sort of quietly introduce you to that mechanic and then have you master that idea. And I'm just loving the variety, I think, would be my reaction to this game.
Yeah, I feel very similarly about this game too. I mean, it's like it really does have that familiarity. At the same time, though, there's a lot of new things being tested here, and you can see some of the ideas that were tested in Odyssey and in like Bowser's Fury coming through here. But it's way deeper than that. These are incredibly deep levels. The levels are really well constructed. They're very easy to understand at least the basics of them, but there's so much going on that you can go back and replay levels and discover a lot more. I love, little touches like the ability to go into the background of a scene and collect things back there, and all the just absolutely chaotic and wild ideas like Mario Elephant and the weird trippy scenes when you eat, when you collect one of the seeds. It's really strange, but it just hangs together really tightly, and it does have a feel too, I think, a little bit of the movies. And I think the movie may have, in a way, informed kind of the personality of the game. I feel like there's a lot of personality in the characters here, maybe more so than some of the classic games.
Yeah, I think also it's interesting you say about not trying to break conventions and do anything new. They've almost kind of gone back to basics, but in a way that they've done it that. So, for example, when you grab one of the seeds and it sort of goes into that trippy alternate version of the level, it's still the same level that you've been just sort of walking left to right in, but you're often like upside down, or it changes the perspective, so you're top down. And the way they've sort of thought out these levels is so complex yet almost kind of simple, and it just keeps your attention and it doesn't let you get bored for 1 second, really, which I think is quite astonishing for something that's a 2D platformer, which is really, you're kind of doing the same thing in every level, really, but yet there's so many extra little things that keep things varied and different, and I think that's what's impressed me about it the most.
Yeah, I read a really good story in Polygon by Chris Plant about the game, and one of the points he made that was that this is sort of like an antidote to the games where you have to go out and do a bunch of quests over and over and just grind your way through tasks and and skill trees and things. And in a lot of ways, I think it kind of is that. I mean, there's a lot of collecting that you do in this game, but it just kind of feels natural as part of the fun and not as a chore that you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's obviously a certain level that you have to get to in terms of collecting the seeds. So you can't not collect any of them, but you certainly don't have to find each one on each level to progress, which I think is really good. And also a lot of the levels most of the levels really are not too long. So you can really just pick up one and do one level if you've got a spare half an hour. And as something who's not as big of a gamer as you guys, I think, are, I appreciate that, because I can my routine at the moment is to, when I'm in the studio working 3 days a week, I normally get the bus in, and it's an hour on the bus there and an hour on the bus back. I can take the tube, and it'll take me about half an hour, but I get the bus because then I can sit on the bus for an hour and play Super Mario. And that little hour is perfect, and the game fits in perfectly because I can crack out a couple of levels and feel like I've achieved something in the game and have a good time. And I think, another reason why I really love the game. It's just easy to pick up and put down as much as you want.
Yeah, I feel like this game hits a very good balance in terms of like the rhythm of the levels and the. You can tell that this game was designed for different ages and different sort of type of players. Like there's gonna be the very young kid who plays this game, doesn't care about sort of being a completionist, right? Collecting all the purple coins or collecting all the wonder seeds in a level, just completing the levels enough to advance to the next world. And the game is pretty permissive in terms of sort of like gating the final boss, like the final castle of each world, so that you don't need too many wonder seeds to advance in the main story, in the main quest. However, the game also tries to appeal, I feel like, to those players like me, maybe, who try to be more, on the completionist side of things, trying to collect everything, trying to complete even the harder challenges, which is something that I appreciated from Mario Wonder. Like certain levels, they have the difficulty stars,
right,
and they tell you, look, this is gonna be a hard level for you. Like, and usually those are like some of the more fun and intricate challenges of the game, like where you really need to master a certain type of jump or a certain type of mechanic. But I also appreciated a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share. I obviously missed the open worldy approach of Odyssey and Bowser's Fury. Bowser's Fury even more than Odyssey, I guess. Mm-hmm. Odyssey had these huge levels that at some point I kind of want to replay Odyssey because I feel like it's been way too many years since the game came out, and I've been kind of craving a 3D Mario again. But Bowser's Fury, with the system of interconnected islands, I think it really shows how a more open world Mario game in which you're actually, like, imagine a Mario game in which you're actually traversing the entire Mushroom Kingdom. Like, that would be incredible. And so I kind of miss that from this game. But obviously this is a 2D Mario game, so there's nothing to be done there. But I appreciated like all the new things, like the badge system, for example. So the badges are these new skills, these new abilities that you can equip, and you have different types of abilities. Like you can get the Luigi style jump where you float in the air for a few seconds, or you can get a better wall jump, or you can start each level with the Super Mario, with a Super Mushroom power up, and all those things like that. And also you can buy these enhancements, these badges, and other perks at the Poplin shop. So all these new sort of more video gamey systems, which is a common thread if you think about it with Tears of the Kingdom. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom also introduced more standard video gamey things this year. And you can ignore all those things, like you can never visit the Poplin shop in Mario Wonder and you'll be fine. But if you are a capital G gamer, you can, and you can get even more out of the game.
Yeah, I think too, Federico, those difficulty levels that you mentioned that are, the star system that they use in the game. What I appreciate about it too is not just that it kind of gives you a heads up that this is going to be a hard level, but there are usually some easier levels nearby. So it's really one of those things where it's like, if you're not really up for a big challenge, you just want to have some Mario fun, you can knock off an easy level or two and come back to the hard ones when you're up for a bigger challenge.
Yeah, I appreciate, as someone I've got my limited bus journey time, so I appreciate that when I'm about to jump into a level. I'm like, oh, I've only got 20 minutes left on my bus. Okay, let's not go for a 4-star level just this minute. So actually, just so you mentioned the Polygon article, I think another article which we'll put in the show notes, which I found really interesting, was an article from Eurogamer, which talks about the design of the levels and the which one bit that I found particularly interesting was the design of the character movements, the animation, and how it calls back to super early Mario, like even Super Mario 2. Like his jump mechanic is pretty much identical to Super Mario 2. And I find that interesting that they, like you say, they're bringing in lots of different styles of gameplay from the previous Mario games, but they've also gone back to the design style of some of the earlier ones as well. And I will put this article in the show notes, but I found that really interesting, and I think that sort of adds an extra little dimension to the gameplay by looking at all these the ways they're doing things.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of thing that's important to kind of make the long-term fans happy and kind of make the game feel familiar to people, so that people who have that muscle memory of how to do the wall jump can still do the wall jump like they did at the very first time they did it. It's
like I've been doing for 25 years.
Right. It hasn't that sort of thing just hasn't changed at all. But it also is very inviting to new people because you're still going to be shown, there's still going to be a level in there that shows you and rewards you for learning how to do the wall jump well, which I think is important too. The other article that I looked at before we started was from IGN, and I think that people are pretty happy with this game because this is the best-selling Mario game or fastest-selling Mario game of all time in terms of it's only been out a few weeks and they're selling them like crazy.
Yeah, I think before we wrap up, we did have I did pose a question, which was what was the best Mario game ever? But I think maybe we'll change that. I was just thinking. And maybe we could just go through and name what's our favorite little detail in this game or favorite character that's part of the game. And I'm going to cheat and go first and say that those little talking flowers,
they are good.
Or as John called them in our show plan, the sassy flowers, which I think is definitely the best way to describe them, which I feel is a nice, fun touch. It just adds an extra dimension to it, but also it just gives you an extra sort of personality that's keeping up with you as you play each level, and I really like them. They're a lot of fun. So yeah, that's my pick for that. How about you guys?
I gotta go with Elephant Mario, just because it's so absurd and it doesn't make any sense. And I mean, we've gone from Cat Mario. No, we gone from Raccoon Mario in Super Mario Bros. 3 to Cat Mario in 3D World, and now Elephant Mario. And I mean, what's next? Snake Mario? I don't know. Mouse Mario? Like, what could be coming next? I have no idea, but I love it. I gotta go with Elephant Mario, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to be super original here. I'm going to go with Elephant Mario too, because I really love the mechanic of the using his trunk to defeat the
trunk, and you can fill it up with water.
That too, right? And get coins by filling up with water and watering the flowers. There's just a lot of little nice touches with Elephant Mario that are a ton of fun. I mean, there's obviously the classic power-ups too, which come in handy on some of the levels, but Elephant's pretty good, especially early on in the game. I think that they did a nice job with that, introducing it as a new power-up and then giving you a lot of cool things you can do with it right away.
Yeah. You were thinking about what's next, but I mean, who knows what's next, because one of the most bonkers things in the game is the fact that Bowser is somehow a castle, which I honestly don't know how they came up with that idea. I don't know whether they were having, they'd been taking a little bit of something strange. What is it?
What is it with Nintendo and castles this year? In Zelda, the castle flies in the sky.
Yeah.
In Mario, the castle is Bowser. Like, what have castles done to Nintendo to deserve this?
That's right. The castles have become the bad guys. I don't know. That is true. That is very funny.
Yeah,
all right, you guys. I think we'll wrap it up there for this week's episode of Mac Stories Unwind. It's been a great AV Club special edition. Thanks again to our sponsor for this episode, which was Collide. And thanks to you, Jonathan and Federico, for joining me on this episode. Jonathan, where can people find you online?
You can find me. I'm on Mastodon, Jonathan Reed at techhub.social.
All right. And I'm contractually obligated to tell you that you can find Federico on Mastodon at fetici.macstories.net.
There's no contract.
I was going to say, what contract are you guys working with?
There's no contract, just in my head. And me at johnvorhees.macstories.net. And we're on Instagram, where Federico is at Fetici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you later, guys.
Ciao, John.
Bye.